On February the 2nd, 2009, in Albuquerque, New Mexico's West Mesa Desert, a dog named Ruka brought his owner a bone, a human femur bone. Christine Ross sent a photo to her sister, who was a nurse. The sister recognized it immediately and told her to call the police. The subsequent investigation then led to the discovery of a literal graveyard in that empty plot, surrounded by fancy houses. 11 women and girls, buried beneath the desert sands, a killer that no one even knew was operating in Albuquerque, and the truth, that one lone woman had been sounding the alarm for years that there was a killer on the loose, but no one listened. Here's the story of the West Mesa Bone Collector and the single police officer that put her career on the line to prove that possibly as many as 30 women were killed over the span of a decade. And nobody did a thing. Let's get into it.
Out of the dirt on February 2nd, 2009. Ross never knew that discovery of the bone.
It all started with a detective named Ida Lopez. After getting pregnant, she was taken off active duty and placed in the cold case division, because maternity leave in law enforcement is a career killer for most women. I'm not going to flesh out the injustices and unfair treatment that women get in this line of work, because that's a whole can of worms on its own. The point is, Detective Ida's the kind of person that makes lemonade, no matter how many lemons they try to throw at her, and one of the reasons I still have faith in the police. It's people like her that bring justice to victims, no matter where they come from, what their pasts are, and no matter how rich, poor, or what color they are.
And to have a resolution to what happened and who's responsible.
So I've been working this case with Ida for just shy of 2 years. I'm very grateful to have Ida, who really is just such a wealth of knowledge on it, and just the continuity and her just encyclopedic understanding of the case has been very helpful.
Just that we're looking into, and we continue. So I just don't want it to be out there where we're losing tips because people assume that we've got this number one suspect, and we're not there yet.
Soon enough, the department just about forgot that she even existed. But Ida wasn't sitting pretty. In the few years she'd been stuck in that dingy little office, she spotted a pattern. Women and girls, particularly those that were involved in sex work and heavy drugs, were going missing. They were mostly Hispanic, young, and troubled enough that they weren't missed or taken seriously by the police. By 2005, she had a board of 24 possible women and teens that had gone missing between 2003 and 2006. She'd interviewed over 200 other sex workers during her investigation. The women she spoke to all worked in an area known as the war zone, and they knew that anyone who went missing from that neighborhood was unlikely to be followed up on by police. And boy, did they have some hair-raising rumors to tell. They said that one of the victims on Ida's list, Cinnamon Elks, was talking about a corrupt cop going around chopping girls up and burying them in West Mesa somewhere. West Mesa, the exact place where 11 bodies would later be found. And the girls believed Cinnamon. They too had noticed that a lot of girls were disappearing into thin air right after going out to meet a client. Ida didn't just walk those streets, pounding the pavement herself. She integrated those girls' fates so deeply into her being that they became her daughters, her sisters, her personal friends. The tenacity and sense of justice that Ida Lopez possesses should be what we all aspire to be like. Ida took the matter to her superiors multiple times to request the task force to be formed. Predictably, she was turned down every time, because in law enforcement, apparently ain't nobody got time for a cold case detective that's running on a baby's sleep schedule, or a few drug addict girls that have the nerve to say that they're in danger. For 3 years, Ida did this tango. She'd find another potential victim, bring it to her superiors, just to get turned down again, and she'd rinse and repeat that dance every few months. By the time that femur bone was found in 2006, she'd raised the alarm more than a dozen times. And damn it, Ida was right. When they excavated the area, 11 bodies were found in total. Want to take a guess how many of those women were on Ida's list of 24? Yep, 10 of the 11 bodies found were on Ida's list of potential victims.
Nearly 2 years after the skeletal remains of 11 women were found buried on the West Mesa, tonight a potential lead.
Size and profile of the women who were killed and buried out on the West Mesa. Investigators have had the pictures for a while and have spent a lot of time trying to identify these women on their own, but they have not had much luck.
Dateline talks to the victims' family members and Detective Ida Lopez about Albuquerque's largest crimes.
Found buried on Albuquerque's West Mesa. So far, Albuquerque police have not made any arrests or identified any suspects.
But I'm getting ahead of myself here. It took years for police to identify all of them. Let's get back to the excavation. This whole shindig took 3 months, stretched for more than 90 acres, and tons upon tons of dirt was moved. This wasn't a secret operation either. Reporters were crawling over this investigation from the get-go and quickly named their new serial killer the West Mesa Bone Collector. I'm not gonna lie, that's a pretty creative moniker. I don't like giving killers nicknames. They deserve some kind of title for the evil that they've done, but you can't deny. This sounds like the title of a James Patterson novel, and it's got hot off the presses written all over it. When satellite images were drawn up, they discovered that the grave indentations were so clearly visible from space that you could see a new grave appearing every few months and even track the killer's tire tracks going in and out. Unfortunately, the satellites never got lucky enough to catch the car, but still, this gave them most of the grave's locations, simplifying the excavation exponentially. This also made it clear that the killer stopped using the area in 2004 when the housing community started construction, most likely abandoning it in favor of a more secure location. For the next 2 years, the painstakingly slow process of identifying the victims commenced. If it weren't for Ida's meticulous investigation, this identification process would have taken a decade. Finally, she was given at least some recognition for her work. It was Ida who was in charge of identifying the victims. Let's start with the women who went missing in 2003. The first was Monica Candelaria, 22 years old, who'd been missing since May of that year. 26-year-old Victoria Chavez, who disappeared a month later. Victoria was the first victim that Ida flagged as a potential victim on her list and would also be the first one who could be identified. Selania Edwards, just 15 years old, went missing in August. Selania was the only victim not of Hispanic descent, and she was the youngest of all of the victims. Selania should never have been on this list if police hadn't done their jobs the first time around. She'd run away from a group home a year before her disappearance and was arrested for solicitation shortly afterward. Not only was she on the missing children's database, she was only 15 years old, underage, and suspected of being a sex worker. Yet police cut her loose and never bothered to get this poor baby into the proper and safe care that she needed. 2 months later, Doreen Marquez, 24, went missing. In 2004, Veronica Romero, 28, went missing in February. She was last seen getting into a white Ford pickup truck. Veronica was followed by a double disappearance of a pair of cousins, Jamie Caterina Barella, 15, and Evelyn Jesus Maria Salazar, who was 27. They went missing in March. Evelyn did have a checkered history, but Jamie had no prior history with drugs or any dangerous behavior. She was just a regular schoolgirl who left a family gathering with her cousin, and neither of them were ever seen again. Virginia Cloven and Julie Nieto, both 24 years old, vanished in April and July. They were followed by Cinnamon Elks, 32, the woman that claimed a corrupt cop was out there killing girls right before she went missing in August. The final body belonged to Michelle Gina Valdez, 22. She was 4 months pregnant at the time of her death. Her unborn child should bring this list to a total of 12 victims, in my personal opinion. All of the women knew each other. Even the pair of cousins who were not connected to drug use or sex work were acquainted with the others because they lived in the same area. And in a place like the war zone, women, no matter what side of the track you were on, they looked after each other. None of the bodies showed any signs of bullet holes, no broken bones, or any physical trauma. The victims were all completely skeletonized, leading to the main prevailing theory for cause of death to be strangulation. All of them were stripped of their personal possessions and were wrapped in plastic, so the killer was very careful. The amount of time taken with the bodies lead investigators to think that he must have committed the murders in a secure location, like a house, because he took time to clean and strip his victims of any identifying items, possibly even washing them down before disposal. But here's the kicker. That area where the bodies were found started being worked on for a future housing community. Not only could houses have been built on top of more graves or entire bodies disturbed and moved to dump sites miles away as earth was moved to make room for more plots, it's highly probable that the killer abandoned his favorite dumping ground when the earth-moving trucks and workmen started showing up there. Ida's list of 24 might just be limited to 11 after all. Her list worked off women who went missing between 2003 and 2006, but the latest victim found in the field went missing in 2004, when construction started, so there were still 2 years that were unaccounted for, or 5 years if you take into account that the first bone was only found in 2009. But the reality was that all police really had was that the killer probably drove a white pickup because one victim was seen getting into one, and that he most likely chose sex workers because they were easily missed, which meant that since they all knew each other, he probably knew them all too. And this, all thanks to Ida's work, was all that police had. Had they taken her seriously back when she sounded the alarm in the first place, this case would have gotten more resources, more attention, and significantly less victims would have died. When the first known victim, Monica Candelaria, went missing back in 2003, police initially did follow up on a rumor that she was killed and discarded somewhere in West Mesa. That's the third victim that was rumored to be dumped there. All the way back to 2003. Of all the places in that desert, why would West Mesa keep coming up? There were many men that were looked into, though none were ever officially named as suspects, including a photographer that liked to photograph sex workers passed out after giving them drugs. A few pimps and local deviants were brought in too, but nothing panned out. There are, however, two extremely suspicious men that many agree are the most likely culprits. The first is Lorenzo Montoya, a known customer to all of the sex workers in the area. He was extremely violent and attempted to kill a girl in the 90s, but was caught by police as he tried to strangle her to death in his car. Somehow, the case got thrown out on a technicality. In 2009, when the first grave was discovered, he strangled another girl to death, undressed her, wrapped her in a carpet that he fastened with duct tape, and as he was loading her into the trunk of his car, Montoya was shot to death by the girl's pimp, who'd become suspicious when she didn't contact him after an agreed amount of time. Authorities ruled the shooting justifiable homicide, and the man was not given any time for killing Montoya. Besides the manner of death and disposal being similar to the West Mesa victims, Montoya also lived less than 2 miles from the gravesite. And those satellite images that showed the tire tracks coming and going to the site, well, they led back to the general direction where Montoya lived. Inside his house, besides the disturbing collection of BDSM and torture tapes, was a tape that he'd recorded himself. The camcorder was pointed at the wall, so no one was visible on the screen. But in the background, the clear sounds of a trash bag being taped with duct tape can be heard. Here, have a listen. So you think, even without DNA or any physical evidence to tie Montoya to the West Mesa victims, this must be our guy, right? There's another one that's just as good a suspect, if you can believe it. Joseph Blee was brought to the authorities' attention by his own ex-wife, who claimed that he frequently paid sex workers for their services, but at the same time, he despised them too. He also regularly disposed of garbage at a site close to the burial site. Blee was picked up by police more than 100 times for solicitation, for breaking into women's houses to steal their underwear, exposure, and he had an entire shed filled with stolen underwear and jewelry. He was later linked by his DNA to 4 sexual assaults of children back in the 80s and the murder of a sex worker.
District Court judge sentenced 58-year-old Joseph Blea today to 36 years behind bars. A jury convicted him last week. Police say the victim was an 8th grader when she was attacked by a masked man.
His house was searched, and only one piece of evidence was found that could potentially connect him to the murders. They found a tag that came from a tree he'd brought at a nursery between 2003 and 2006. The same tag, brought at the same time and for the same species of tree, was found in the grave of one of the bodies in the desert. It's a bit of a stretch, I'll admit, but it's all we've got. There is literally no other evidence to tie these girls to anyone or any place of interest. Both Montoya and Blee look like great suspects. Both were proven murderers and both were deviants. It could have been either of them, or both of them working together. Or the guy's still out there, filling up another gravesite out there in the desert. Let's not forget Cinnamon Elks was talking about a corrupt cop out there killing girls and dumping them in West Mesa right before she ended up there herself. And Veronica Romero was seen getting into a white pickup truck, and none of the suspects drove a white pickup. Police are sure that Ida's list has more victims that are linked to the West Mesa Bone Collector, including 9 others that they found that went missing between 2001 and 2006. All they did that was worth mentioning was to set out a 1-acre park named Women's Memorial Park for the victims, which is just about the only time in authoritative history that anyone besides Ida ever honored these girls that survived in the war zone their entire short lives. I can't tell you who did these terrible things, and we can only hope that he died a slow and painful death somewhere in a ditch like the animal that he is. But one thing I do know for certain is that there are women and kids just like the West Mesa victims all around the world, vulnerable, targeted, and dismissed because authorities and society don't think they deserve to have our attention. It's a travesty. It's a tragedy. And it needs to stop now. How many more boneyards are out there? How many houses have been built on top of missing women? And most terrifying of all, how many bone collectors are still roaming around preying on women and children? You know the drill. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Drop a line and don't forget to sub. See you in the next one, people.